This meeting is being held in conformance with the Sunshine Law. Notice of time, date, and place has been furnished to the Bergen Record and the Ridgewood News. Notice has also been posted on the bulletin board of the Administration Building. Would the clerk kindly take the roll?
Mayor Giordano.
Here.
Mr. Bjork.
Here.
Mrs. McNamara.
Here.
Mr. Orovitz.
Here.
Mr. Schatz.
Here.
Mr. Shalero.
Here.
Mrs. Sherman.
Here.
Everyone kindly rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us have a moment of silence for all our Waldwick veterans and all veterans across our country who have given the ultimate sacrifice to keep us free. The clerk, kindly do the prayer.
We thank you for everyone gathered here now. Thank you that you know each of us by name and have caused us to walk with you. We say that we are dependent on you and our trust is in you completely. As we surrender ourselves in adoration, we ask that you would come by your Holy Spirit and inspire our hearts today. Come fill our lives with your love, fill our conversation with your grace and truth, fill this meeting with your presence. We ask this for your glory and praise. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to tonight's meeting. Under the mayor's report, just two items. First of all, on Thursday, 11/11/11, Thursday, 11/11/11 is Veterans Day. And as always, we have been invited by the American Legion of VFW to participate in the Veterans Day parade and also service. All those who would like to attend, please be at the American Legion Hall by 11:45. It kicks off exactly at 11 o'clock. We'll be marching to the Christopher Cdl Public Safety Complex, where there'll be a short ceremony to honor all our veterans. Also, this past Tuesday was Election Day, and I'd like to thank both four candidates who ran for the position of council. Unfortunately, there's always two that succeed and two that don't. But here in Waldwick, they did a great job campaigning. They stepped up to the plate. They put themselves on the line. And what they did was they had agendas to make Waldwick better. And I thank every one of them who has tried to become council members. Even if you did not make it, you still have a say in Waldwick, and you still are invited to be part of anything that the community does. And I look forward to working with everyone, once again, for the betterment of our community. And that's all I have to report right now. Financial Administrative Committee, Mr. Shalero.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to follow up on your election comments, a lot goes into our staff work for organizing an election. It starts weeks and weeks before, sometimes months before. There's always new rules, guidelines, and procedures. Our staff did a great job keeping up with that. We understand there'll be more changes coming in the future as elections become more and more computerized. And, our staff does a great job at keeping on top of these changes and informing the public. So we had a big turnout in town, so I know the staff worked really hard throughout the day. The day starts very early for poll workers and our staff, and it ends very late. So we want to thank them for the effort that they put forward. There's going to be two items on our consent resolution tonight, and I'm going to mention them now because it takes a little bit of explanation. The first is the Bergen Gif Dividend. This is something we've reported on in prior years. When the GIF closes out a fund year for reserves for claims that it has, it often will give the member communities a dividend. So when we get our dividend, what we've historically done is rolled it over to our first quarter payment the following year. So we're recommending we do that tonight. That's what's on the consent resolution. And, that will go toward our first quarterly payment in 2022. The second item is best practices inventory. And I know the language could be a little confusing and misleading, but basically, a number of years ago, the state started sending surveys to municipalities about the way we prepare our budget, the way we execute our budget. It kind of expanded into other areas beyond the budget. It's kind of morphed into a general best practices inventory. And the state uses this more or less as a scorecard to ensure that we're still eligible to receive whatever state aid we're eligible for. And, I'm happy to report that we've never failed one of these. We normally score pretty high. We have really good best practices here. We also look at some of the questions on the best practices survey for different ways that we do things in terms of preparing the budget, managing the budget, conducting audits, things like that. And sometimes we get some good suggestions from it. This year, some of the answers were negative because there are things we're working on that haven't been completed yet, such as updating our employee handbook, which normally takes place, this time of year, which the council has been reviewing an updated version of it, and we're getting ready to do that. But we had to answer no on the best practices. We haven't updated our employee handbook. But we are in the process of doing that. So I think we continue to score really well and get some good feedback from the state on that. And I'm happy to say that we should still qualify for all the aid we're entitled to. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Fire and Police Protection Committee, Mr. Orbit.
Thank you, Mayor. At our recent meeting, we elected officers for 2022. The department officers are yourself for president. Vice President would be Christina Gugliaro. The treasurer would be Jim O'Connell, and the secretary would be Thomas Costa. The fire chief is going to be Walt Riker. The first assistant chief, Andy Gugliaro, and second captain would be David Guy, and second lieutenant would be Matt Ames. I'd like to thank the police department and the fire department for showing up at Cole McKeon's house yesterday on Gateway. Cole is the a little boy from our town who's been battling cancer for years now. And there's a foundation that's sending him and his family to Disney World. So the police and fire showed up with some surrounding fire departments and some other police officers to be there for the presentation. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the foundation, but maybe Patrick can touch on it. Or if you would like me to.
Yeah, now, so
Who are
it's,
the people that are sending?
it's Baking Memories for Kids. And if you Google that, you can find their website. They bake cookies and sell cookies in the last 2 or 3 months of the year, and the proceeds from those sales go towards providing trips like this that's been provided to Cole and other children in his situation along with their families. All the money raised in this time funds those projects. So part of the event this week was, one, to present Cole with this trip, but two, to encourage people to research this organization, because the more they can raise money, the more of these types of trips that they can provide. So I'd encourage everyone to take a visit to their website. They are a 501c3 corporation.
And I'm glad they're going now because I think Disney's going through a 50-year anniversary down there. So there's a lot of exciting things happening. And last but not least, I'd also like to, in anticipation of Veterans Day, I'd like to thank all the Waldwick and countrywide veterans for their service, both past and present, especially my son, Nicky, who is an ensign naval aviator and is in active service in Mississippi right now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report.
Thank you. Recreation and Health Committee, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was through Borough Park several times, but just this afternoon as well. And if anybody hasn't been through Borough Park, I encourage you to go. It's peak leaf season there, and it looks absolutely beautiful with the lake, the pond, and all the leaves. There's some great photo opportunities. So I recommend everyone takes a walk through the park. The DPW is doing a great job keeping it looking nice. Today, it was so wonderful because there were so many children playing, just having a great time on such a beautiful day. And also, when you're at Borough Park, the cupola has been completed. It's painted and it looks really nice. Serve Pro did a wonderful job for our borough, and we thank them very much for painting the cupola and making it look nice again. The DPW fixed 2 sewers on my street, and I wanted to thank them for that. They did a great job. I went to the Board of Education meeting. They're progressing on the plans for the referendum. Today they met with the architect to discuss timing of getting the project going. They anticipate it being a year and a half. They mentioned that the traffic will be horrendous in town because one of the parking lots will be closed. So it's going to be a traffic concern. So don't drive down Wyckoff Ave at school dismissal or drop-off time. The girls' soccer team, the boys' soccer team, and the football team are all in the States. The boys' soccer and the football have progressed. I just found out that the girls' soccer lost today, so they had a great season. And that's it. I'll have more on new business. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Committee, Mrs. McNamara.
Thank you, Mayor. The DPW was able to work on some of those severely bad catch basins. That might be the one that Mrs. Sherman was referring to lately. They're happy that they got through the bad ones ahead of the leaf cleanup station. That's probably taking about 90% of their time right now. But they said they are on schedule, so if you refer to the website's leaf pickup schedule for your own personal pickups at your house in your neighborhood, they are running on schedule. The rest of their time, obviously, keeping up our properties and parks clean. They've been cleaning some lift stations at the wells and sewer maintenance line cleaning as well. They were able to remediate a water issue over at Kennedy Drive. They are waiting for PSE&G to come out and do some markouts. Hopefully a new hydrant will be installed shortly thereafter. They are currently looking at a water issue over on Hemlock and Evergreen. Really too early to tell what the issue is there, but hoping that some additional hydrant flushing will resolve that. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot a couple things on the
Uh-oh. Sure, go ahead.
Sorry.
No problem.
I forgot to mention that on November 18th, there'll be a rabies clinic at the DPW garage from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So if your dog or cat is eligible or needs their rabies vaccine, please come over. They need to be leashed or in a cage. On November 28th will be the menorah lighting at the library at 4 o'clock, and December 3rd, the tree lighting at 7 p.m. at the library as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Building and Grounds Committee, Mr. Bjork.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a lot to report on right this moment. I do see under policy votes, our part-time fire official, Jimmy O'Connell, will be retiring due to his retirement in Ridgewood. And I'd like to thank Kelly and her crew for pulling off a seamless election. It looked like everything went well. I didn't hear any complaints, and I think we were well staffed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our Administrator,
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Clerk Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Overall, the election did go well. It's always a good day when your machines work and the e-poll books open and close correctly. So, again, the parking seems to be an issue at the high school, but I have a feeling that we will be having to move some things around once they start their project. So we'll see what happens there. The poll workers have been reaching out to us because many of them well, they were happy for this election. They made the $300. They are all telling me if it goes back to 200, they're not coming back. So, and I actually don't blame them. They haven't had a raise in 20 years because our poll workers, believe it or not, have been here for 20 years. So they have had 20 years without a pay raise. They are adapting to new requirements, new technology, and doing a really, really good job. So the Bergen County Municipal Clerks Association, the Municipal Clerks Association of New Jersey, And hopefully, we can get the county officials to put a little bit of pressure on our legislative representatives to make sure that they get a raise and that they make it permanent, because it's well overdue. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant Administrator, Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. One item from me tonight. We are now in the open enrollment period for the Community Development Block Grant. This is an annual grant from the HUD Department. We've used this in the past for infrastructure upgrades to Frederick Street and Harrison Avenue. This grant is limited in nature, that it can only be used in low to moderate income areas within the borough, as well as it can be used for accessibility upgrades. Patrick, myself, and Mike Latour have been discussing preliminary ideas, which we will soon be sharing with the council for feedback, and this would be submitted in December. It generally does get approved, and the amounts on average can be about $115,000 to $125,000, around that range. That's all for me.
Thank you very much. Borough Attorney. Mr.
Thank you,
Gonzalez.
Mayor. No report.
Are we going into close for anything tonight?
Yes, yes, we are.
Thank you very much. Consent resolutions and resolutions of the governing body.
Be it resolved that the following resolutions herewith listed by consent, having been considered by the governing body of the Borough of Waldeck, are hereby passed and approved. 2021-314, approval of consent. 2021-315, approval of minutes, regular meeting October 26, 2021. Policy vote A. Chamber of Commerce request to hang, that's supposed to say, sorry, the Shop Small banner on Route 17 fence line beginning the first week of November through late December. They actually are waiting for us to approve this to do that. 2021-316, authorized release of dumpster permit escrow for 160 Crescent Avenue. 2021-317, accept resignation of part-time fire official and OEM coordinator James O'Connell. 2020-318, approval of submission of the local government services best practice inventory for 2021. 2021-319, acknowledging receipt of the dividend from the Bergen County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund and authorizing the application. 2021-320, refund tax overpayment for Block 61, Lot 37, and 2021-321, payment of vouchers.
Do I have a motion and a second to accept? Motion by Nicole, second by Don. On the question, I just want to clarify one thing about 2021-317. James O'Connell is retired. He has to retire from his position as the fire official and the OEM coordinator. We already have a fire official that will be taking his place. The reason why he has to retire is he retires from the village of Ridgewood, and according to state law, you have to leave any position for 6 months. So once the 6 months comes up, either he has to reapply, and we'll talk to him about that in 6 months. Anyone else? Yes.
Don, you're not going to do anything on the best practices any further?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I just had a couple quick questions as I was reading through that. I know one of them was about our cybersecurity incident response plan, and I was kind of surprised that we don't have one now, since we already did a cybersecurity response.
Yeah.
Not technically a plan, but did we garner any information from the IT professionals and people that we hired back then to quickly and implement a plan so it doesn't happen again?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have, our IT company has a cybersecurity incident response plan, and our joint insurance fund has a cybersecurity incident response plan. That's important because we have a cybersecurity policy with our GIF, so if there were ever an incident, they'd be our first call. They set the protocol, and fortunately, we work with a very competent IT company that has a good plan. Unfortunately, not every municipality in the state has those resources available to them, and so that's why the state requires this. I think a plan is a good idea and something that we would, given the time, look to complete specific for the borough, but I don't want the mayor, council, or the public to think that we're left without any plan at all. We certainly have a plan. It's just, it's not one that is specific to the borough and meets the state's requirements.
All right, so it's not a simple, we follow the plan of our IT company. So we have to actually type up our own
Yes,
somewhat. Okay.
exactly right. And again, I spoke with our IT company. They have a great plan.
Yeah, no.
GIF has a great
I
plan.
think we did
So
well.
we're covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the only other one I had was about the anti-nepotism policy. What's the concept there, that we want to make sure everybody's carefully vetted and hired based on merit, or are we trying to say that you're not allowed to work here if you have a relative?
The policy as proposed by the state would prohibit you from supervising someone that you have a close relationship with. The borough handbook has a nepotism policy, so similar to cybersecurity, we're not left without any guidance. We have a policy. The state requires that it be adopted by ordinance. We don't have a specific nepotism policy that is adopted by ordinance, and our policy is not as stringent as the state.
Good. And actually, my last one was the electric vehicle charging station concept. If the municipality provided that, is that basically a free service to people that use it, or is it something that is for profit, or how would that be implemented?
However the municipality chooses to structure. So there are municipalities that have free charging stations. A lot of times you'll see them do it in like a downtown area or an area like in need of revitalization as a way to draw people into those areas. You can put them in your municipal lots and charge for them. I've seen them in municipal parking garages for charge. So it's really however the municipality wants to set it
Okay.
up.
You had mentioned, I believe, or somebody mentioned that we might consider that as our long-awaited parking lot.
Yes.
So are we going to discuss that with Boswell? Long-awaited there, Craig?
You're gonna be required. The state,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
state law has changed that they
You-
require now for new lots to have.
Right.
a-
But it doesn't have to be offered for free or something?
Correct.
Okay.
You just have to have them available.
So Boswell will look into that. Is that something for us to consider?
Yeah, we've already started to look at that with the borough engineer. They've evaluated the electrical service to the police department as well as the borough hall to see what it's able to support. They'll provide us with their recommendations.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk, let me take the roll.
Mr. Bjork?
Yes.
Mrs. McNamara? Yes. Mr. Orvik?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Under advertised business, clerk, kindly read ordinance number 2021-29.
Ordinance number 2021-29, an ordinance amending Chapter 71 recycling, Section 6.2 yard waste handling and collection to reflect change in leaf.
I ask anyone,
Just wondering what that noise was.
are you hearing anything from the speaker?
If everyone just moves their mics a little bit, maybe it's...
Anyone from the council would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read? Anyone? Good.
So this is something we've been talking about for a few weeks now, and essentially what we're talking about is making a change to our leaf collection program by making it curbside pickup only and not having special pickup for bag pickups. People can still put leaves in bags, but they won't be picked up on a weekly basis. They'll be picked up on the day of your district's pickup. The reason for this change was there weren't enough people participating in the bag leaf pickup program to make it worthwhile in regard to cost and efficiency versus the other methods we use to pick up leaves. And we would do better to put those resources into the vac pickup and the curbside pickup that we could get through the leaf season more efficiently.
Anyone else from the council like to comment? Okay, I close the council's comments and open up to the public. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read, please kindly come up to the microphone and state your name and address for our record.
sent on regarding, for the residents of Warwick, especially if it rains for a week or two, and there's some heavy leaves. Also, how are you gonna police that with the landscapers? They come by once a week and just blow it out in the streets. It's been like that for 35 years. I don't know why that should change. That's my comment there about the 7-day window to get all those leaves on the street.
The 7-day window is set by the New Jersey DEP, and that was established by ordinance in the borough and has been followed by the borough for years now. So that's not changing per this ordinance. The only part of this ordinance, or the borough code that's changing per this ordinance, is specific to the availability of bag leaf pickup. So we don't have an option the 7 days is already established, and we don't have an option to change that.
Yes, ma'am.
Your last meeting, and I expressed my concerns about this, especially the fact that there's a certain population that should not be lugging those bags to the DPW for health reasons, for a variety of reasons. But people should not be expected to do that. If people bag their leaves, within a day or two, they become liquid down on the bottom and they stink. So putting them in a garage or something doesn't make sense. If they get wet, they're not going to be able to be picked up without the bottom falling out. Not everybody has storage on their property for those leaves. And as far as having an ordinance about not raking your leaves into the street, I'm District 2. And so they were picked up on Wednesday, this past Wednesday. By the weekend, when I noticed them, maybe it was before, there were leaves in the street. Some of them were raked into the street, some of them were in bags. So those are going to sit there until December the 3rd. Today when I was out, I happened to drive down Prospect and past the driveway that comes out of the high school. Guess where the largest pile of leaves was? At the end of that driveway. So they had removed the leaves from the high school, and almost a month before they're going to be picked up, those were sitting in the street. So why have an ordinance that you can't enforce? I don't understand that. But my biggest concern is about the bagged leaves and not being able to get rid of them unless you take them to the DPW yourself, because that's just not fair to a certain population in town. So I think you're throwing some seniors under the bus by doing that.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? If not, I close the public's comments, and I ask for a motion and a second to pass this ordinance on second reading, and that the clerk be authorized to advertise it in local legal newspapers as required by law. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Don, second by Joe. Clerk, kindly take the roll.
Mr. Bjork?
Yes.
Mrs. McNamara?
No.
Mr. Orovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
No.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Any unfinished business from the council? Anybody from the council have any unfinished business? Yes, Greg.
I think it was last meeting, I had mentioned the Ted Bell family, that we might want to try to reach out to them.
I did.
Yeah, and as did I, and I found he's got 3 daughters that are still alive. One's in Basking Ridge, I think one's in New York City, and one's out in New Mexico, as well as his wife is local in New York City. I had the opportunity to speak with the one daughter, Rhonda, and she kind of filled me in on her memories of her father becoming a council person and how he got involved. And it sounds like he got involved where they wanted to put the traffic light up at the top, up by Route 17, back when you used to be able to just have a crossing guard and take you across there. But she certainly sounded interested in, having her family involved if and when we do get the park ready enough that we can possibly have a dedication or something. I don't think the one daughter would make it in from New Mexico, but all their kids, grandkids, have never even come back to town, so it could be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I reached out to the girl from New York, as I said I would. I didn't go after Buddy Litchell on this because I didn't know if Buddy Litchell would be able to respond to my phone call. So I called, Mark Raimondo helped me with the help of Jimmy O'Connell, who Jimmy O'Connell, as a matter of fact, graduated with the daughter from New York City. And her and I talked, and she wants us to keep her informed of what's going on and whatever's going to be done, she'd like to be a part of it. Any other unfinished business? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention for our veterans out there that the county is offering a free round of golf on Veterans Day this Thursday as well as Friday at any of the 6 courses. So if you go to their county website, you can select your tee time for any of the courses out there. That's all.
Thank you. Any other unfinished business? Okay, if none, we're going to go on to new business. We have a couple of items. First item is personal policy manual.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And we can take these first 3 items together, the personnel policy manual, the employee handbook, and the policy addressing the protection and safe treatment of minors. Every 2 to 3 years, the borough reviews its policies and procedures as they relate to employees and update them. We're provided with a tremendous amount of information from our joint insurance fund, who provides us a lot of sample documentation, and we work with our legal counsel to update these policies. This year, the insurance company's rewrite was much more intensive than last year. We have hundreds of pages now of policies and procedures, which is a good thing. It's always nice to have written down the guiding words that we can hold all employees to. So I provided these documents to the mayor and council a week and a half ago. I want to make sure that the mayor and council is in agreement with the contents of those documents. When we can do that with a straw poll tonight. If the council's in agreement, we will distribute those to the department heads and the unions for review, which should be straightforward, and I would hope to have these documents back before the mayor and council at the next meeting. By and large, the policies presented by the GIF don't change much. So they'll present things like the ADA requirements, equal opportunity, equal employment, whistleblower policy, things that are boilerplate. They are adopted in the same form by each municipality covered by the GIF. There are other areas where the borough has to incorporate our own benefits. So those areas would be things like vacation, hours, vehicle use. So that's pretty straightforward in taking what was in our previous manual and moving it to the new manual. So I've whittled down, basically for the mayor and council's discussion, the few areas that you may want to give consideration to, and either that they're new policies entirely or that they are recommended changes from the borough's previous policy. I included that in the memo a week and a half ago. I'll review them by title now, and if there's any follow-up, we can discuss each one more in depth. In the personnel policy manual, we talked about overtime at our current policy doesn't cap the amount of overtime an employee can accrue in terms of comp time, and this policy proposes a 40-hour cap. Vacation, sick, and personal leave, our current policy doesn't include the increment in which those days may be taken. Sometimes they're taken as low as 30 minutes. Bookkeeping and staffing, it can create some issues, so we proposed they be restricted to half-day increments. There's a alcohol and drug-free workplace policy. That is intensive. It includes new testing for safety-sensitive employees. Those are employees where even a momentary lapse in judgment could have drastic consequences. So areas like, obviously, police, CDL drivers, police dispatchers, and also extend to our volunteer organizations. So Walvac and the fire department, both of whom are covered under the borough's insurance policies. Those positions would be safety-sensitive positions along with a few others. And with that designation, there would be pre-employment testing, random testing, fitness for duty, reasonable suspicion, which we already have, and then post-accident testing. So all those would be new drug testing for employees. So that's probably the most drastic of changes that the policy included. We also have a donated leave program, which is the borough currently does not have. This was exact copy of the GIF's model policy, and it allows for an employee, if they have a life-threatening illness or if they are caring for a family member with a life-threatening illness, other employees can donate leave to them. The GIF did a really good job of working through a policy where, you have to have a minimum number of sick days before you're allowed to donate. The employee has to have worked for the borough for so long before they can donate. You can only donate so many hours. You can only be left with a minimum number of hours. So it's a well thought out policy, and I think something that would benefit employees of the borough. And there is a CDL policy. This is required by the DOT. There's not much that the borough can change in the policy, but it's at least, since it's new, it's at least worth reviewing. Then there is a section in longevity that pertains to a personnel matter that we will discuss in closed session. And there is also a completely new policy addressing the protection and safe treatment of minors and frequently asked questions. That policy arises somewhat from the recent law extending the length of time where a municipality can be held liable for any mistreatment of minors. And so we, the GIF had looked at all of their policies around that area and have updated them, so it's an entirely new policy. That is everything. So if, there's a lot there. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review it. If you have questions now, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, maybe we could consider approving at least the drafts of those policies so they can be distributed to the department heads and union heads.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you. I went through all of the policies. Yikes. I did have a couple questions. Under the alcohol and drug-free workplace, are we including marijuana in that? Because isn't marijuana now becoming legal? Are we adopting a policy as a borough that is still a banned substance for our employees to use even on their days off or their evenings off? What is?
This is a new area of personnel policy. So I don't know if all of it is set yet, but I'll say that there's a difference between safety-sensitive positions, which are the positions identified by title, where even a momentary lapse in judgment could have disastrous consequences. Those titles, by and large, would still prohibit the use of marijuana.
Okay.
Other titles in the borough, you could direct the question towards the borough attorney.
You also, even though it's becoming legal, there's still, it's not like somebody can show up high to work.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
they wouldn't
So
arrive.
you can't,
Yeah.
right, there's going to be guidance in regards to people who can notice or do an evaluation that they think that this person might be under the influence when they show up and things like that. But outside of work, you're not going to prohibit it or anything like that because it's now legal for them to use it.
Okay.
And generally, for those non-safety sensitive positions, the only time you would test them is if you had reasonable suspicion and they were at work. And in any situation, regardless of future marijuana laws, you're not able to come to work under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So that kind of the reasonable suspicion training currently exists in our policy, so that doesn't really change. The big part that changes is that for those titles identified as safety-sensitive positions, they will now have a lot more testing, pre-employment, random drug testing, post-accident testing. None of those currently exist in the manual. We only have unless you fall under other guidance. So CDL drivers fall under DOT guidance where they have mandatory random drug testing. Police officers fall under state attorney general guidelines where they have random testing. But both of those titles are then additionally identified as safety-sensitive positions in the employee handbook, and would be required to undergo random drug testing, pre-employment drug testing, which is already satisfied by those other policies.
Okay. All right. And just a couple other questions.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah.
To that question? I want to ask a question. Are they going to put a limit on the level of marijuana in your body like they would with alcohol? Has a level, you're not considered under the influence at a certain level, but you are considered under the influence in marijuana. Now, I know marijuana can stay in your body for a month, you know,
Longer.
but sometimes longer,
Yeah,
especially if
3
they're testing your hair,
Mhm.
they can find it in there. Are they going to come back with a level that's considered under influence or not under influence? I mean, because I think that as of right now, drug testing is a positive or negative.
I don't think you would have that distinction for this reason. If you are in a safety-sensitive position, any level is considered above the limit. And if you would be tested because of reasonable suspicion, the fact that you have given rise to or determined to have reasonable suspicion enough to send you for drug testing, if you tested positive at any limit, would, I think, tell us that you were under the influence of, in this case, marijuana at work. And that reasonable suspicion training is something that I have to undergo, supervisors have to undergo. It will become more stringent, obviously, because of the new laws, but in either of those scenarios, it doesn't matter what the limit is. If you show up to work and you appear to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol and you subsequently test positive to your question, marijuana, any limit would be too much. If you are identified as a safety-sensitive position, any limit would be too much. And I would ask the borough attorney to confirm what I've just said.
No, I would confirm everything
Yeah.
you say, because it can't be a yes or no because of the fact that they've now allowed or in certain cases required workers' comp to pay for medicinal marijuana, if that's the treatment that's been ordered. So obviously with how long it would stay in somebody's system, they could come back from an injury if that's how they're being treated, and it would still be in their system. But they might not rise to the level of reasonable suspicion to then force a test.
Okay, and I noticed we mentioned some organizations who would fall under the alcohol and drug-free. That would include our fire, ambulance, CERT. Would CERT be there too? I didn't know where we draw the line.
In discussions with our labor council and our borough council, CERT was not identified as a safety-sensitive position.
Okay, all right. And then, are you gonna start talking about the other two manuals, or should we save those questions
Yeah.
for another time?
No, we definitely want to talk about the other two manuals. The employee handbook, there was only the one change, and that was in longevity, which we'll discuss in closed session. The policy addressing the protection and safe treatment of minors, entirely new policy. There's not much to adapt to the borough, so this policy is as it was presented by our labor council. We used the version from our labor council, not the version from the joint insurance fund. Our labor council's policy satisfies the requirements of the GIF, but our labor council recommends this policy. So in both the handbook and the safe treatment of minors, I don't think there's unless there's a large concern, I don't think there's much discussion to be had.
Well,
But
my main question was, do we do the background checks on the volunteer coaches? Do we, like, our borough insurance covers some sports teams, correct? So do we hold the Megan's Law check for those volunteer coaches? Do we have to make sure that they're up to date every year? because you could run the check every year according to the manual. Do we make sure that all of those volunteers, and then as a follow-up to that question, organizations that use our facilities, Scouts, I don't know who else uses it, but are all of those volunteers, I know with scouting, you're checked by the organization. I used to be a scout leader. You're checked by the organization, but is the borough provided with that information as well, since we're technically authorizing them and insuring them?
This policy is much more stringent than previous policies, so the answer is, if we don't already do it, we will do it for this policy. And for the actual implementation, if we don't do the check ourselves, we will ensure that the organization signs off that they have done the check
Okay.
in terms of that. But it is, what you read in this policy is much different than, or it's different than what is currently in practice in the borough. Once this policy is adopted, we'll update our requirements and our procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, to that question, I think there was one of the things in the frequently asked questions that addressed that whole issue, where basically they're saying if they're performing any activities on our fields that we own, we have to get, a certificate of insurance and be named harmless and all that type of thing. I also, unfortunately, read through these things as well, and I was interested with the hours of the administration. It says it's like, I think it was basically 8:30 to 4 o'clock, a half an hour lunch. That's a 7-hour workday, unless that's just the hours of the actual building being open. What does an hourly employee actually work in a day?
We work a 35-hour work.
You do work 35 hours, okay. So when we're doing these half days, which I think all your suggestions were good suggestions as far as changes and making people have to take at least a half a day off or 4 hours instead of, you're going to have an accounting nightmare if you do 3.75 or whatever. Might as well just make it 4 hours. Exactly. So, okay. And I think the rest of the suggestions are well. After the meeting, I'll show you something I thought was typed up wrong in this one document, but not for now. Good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir. I have, one of the things you put in there, pre-employment drug screening. And now is that also going to be done for as Mr. Sherman said, for volunteer ambulance corps and volunteer fire department before they start, or are they going to be start now with everybody? Is it going to be retroactive or what?
I believe that, I don't think the policy speaks specifically to that, so we'll discuss it and decide on a fair approach to that. I will say that I have not discussed this with either the fire department or the ambulance corps. Obviously, having them subject to a drug and alcohol testing policy is a serious consideration for the mayor and council. So I wanted to make sure that we had this body's buy-in before approaching them. But I'll do that tomorrow so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yes, Don?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I think all the comments everyone said, I agree. I thought many of the draft recommended language were all very comprehensive and very applicable to our borough. The one conversation I had with our administrator earlier was on the donated leave program proposal. I was just concerned with more or less the paper trail. I was questioning the form, so I've asked him to revisit that just to make sure everyone who's participating, whether a donor or recipient, is, we're getting the appropriate signatures and permission in writing so that we have the paper trail to just, to kind of verify what the intent was and who did what. So other than that, I thought it looked pretty good.
Just a suggestion about the drug testing, maybe when like the fire department, when the fire department goes for their physical, when they join the fire department, before it comes to the mayor and council to be approved, or first goes to the department, maybe during that physical, we could have them do a drug test.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there now anyway, and we pay for it, so that's one of the requirements when you join the fire department. Maybe we could look into it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else?
And that scale with the ambulance corps, they don't do that. We don't accept people in on the council, so it'd be a little bit more trickier with that.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have to, they fall under our insurance. We have the liability, so we have to go through the steps of ensuring that we mitigate that to the greatest extent possible. So we'll work, they're good people to work with, so I'm sure we can work out a procedure.
Anyone else? Kelly, would you like to do a
A
straw?
new business, or a new business, or this
Just for
specifically?
these three, we're going to do a straw poll.
Okay.
Kelly?
Sure. Mayor Giordano.
Yes.
Mr. Bjork.
Yes.
Mrs. McNamara.
Yes.
Mr. Orvid.
Yes.
Mr. Shatz.
Yes.
Mr. Shalera.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman.
Yes.
We have one more on the new business, then we'll open it up for the council. Any questions or discussions? A discussion of the noise ordinance.
There was a question at the last meeting about providing greater restriction to the borough's noise ordinance. I had given you with the packet, I think a week and a half ago, some of the ordinances for surrounding towns. You kind of get an idea of what other places have found acceptable. And I think that there's an opportunity here to restrict our hours, and it would be reasonable, especially compared to other boroughs. So there's a lot you can do. Plenty of places have no use of those internal combustion engine lawn maintenance equipment on Sundays, which is probably the most severe you could do. But they're also, you could start later on Saturdays, end earlier Saturdays, Sundays. There's a lot of directions you could go with this. But ultimately, when you decide on hours, it's, the actual ordinance change is incredibly easy. So I don't know, it'd be a good opportunity to discuss how you feel. Maybe we, for the benefit of the conversation, look at just Sunday first, and then just Saturday after that, and see what the consensus is on restrictions for each day.
Patrick, before we begin that, can you just comment on how many complaints or comments or suggestions you received from the public in the last year about this matter?
In the last year, maybe myself, I probably received 3 complaints. But I do know, in talking, it's not one of those things where it drives people to Borough Hall, but when you talk to people about quality of life, it's always that comment. You always hear that. So I don't think that the 3 is representative of people who with noise, but infrequently rises to the level where they fall.
Thank you.
And I think before we just,
Yes.
I would just add that during COVID, we got a lot of those complaints, a lot. Because people were home and they were trying to work and they couldn't even move something.
Yeah.
So, while maybe recently we haven't had as many, I know I still get them. So, probably more than 3 than Patrick, I would say, a dozen or so.
Thank you.
and the last person
Same
that
with
did
me.
call us about this, they suggested Saturday, Sunday, and holiday. Personally, I think if we're going to do anything, we should do it lump it all together. But it's up to the council if they want it. Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, we come up with a time in which you can start, and then instead of picking Saturday one day, Sunday, I think that's going to be a little more. This is something that's really serious. As Patrick said, people, Don said it the last week, people want to go outside and have a cup of coffee in the good weather, and they're having sounds, hearing sounds from blowers and lawnmowers, and maybe we should restrict it on, 3 days, and then just go with a time. That's difficult.
I'm going to give my comment right now. I am a person that does my own lawn. I do my own leaves. I do it all myself. And my wife doesn't let me hire a landscaper because I'm too picky. And I end up going out after the landscaper does I pay for him to do that. So my wife will not let me do that. I enjoy my lawn. I enjoy it. And I also work until 5 or 6 at night. I rarely do I ever get past 5 or 6. I go out and do something with an internal combustion engine. Saturdays, I have to do my lawn. Sundays, I would be willing to accept something from 12 o'clock, before 12 o'clock on Sunday morning. That's about the only restriction I would accept, because I need to do my work on Saturdays and after 12 o'clock on Sundays. I try and do that, keep that that's my own personal policy that I try and keep to. Don't go out before Sunday at 12 o'clock. I also don't go out before 10 o'clock on Saturday morning either, because I'll get my daughter screamed at. So it's one of those, they're not complaining to you guys, but they are complaining. They're all going to complain about that, and they're all sleepers. So I'm not trying to make light of it, but that's would be my only thing that I would suggest.
Paul, have you tried cleaning your gutters outside your daughter's window at like 8 o'clock in the morning?
No, nothing before 10 o'clock on Saturday, nothing before 12 o'clock on Sunday. That's my.
If I can just add one comment, as we discussed, there's a greater use of electric-powered blowers and lawnmowers. Those would not fall under this restriction. So if you want to go out at 6:30 a.m. and blow your leaves to your heart's content, you'd be able to do so with an electric blower.
Well, I have expanded to weed whacker. That's electric. So it's good stuff.
Yes, Don.
If I could get a blower that would work that well on a battery, I probably would.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you know, I thought it was really an interesting exercise. You know, like we've heard, we only get a couple of written comments from people, but wherever you go, people do talk about it. I mean, we're a community where a lot of us do our own yard work, and we do it on weekends. And our properties abut each other, so no matter where you know, sometimes I'm out on my deck and I'm like, where is that blower coming from? It could be from halfway down the block. I really wouldn't know. But it really does carry. So it was an interesting exercise to see what other municipalities around us do. They're all a little different in size of lot sizes and things like that, but still it was an interesting exercise that there were several, and I don't remember which, it doesn't matter, who don't allow it at all on Sunday. So I thought that was really interesting. I don't propose that. I'm kind of leaning toward what Councilman Schatz suggested, that, you know, to me, Sunday morning is a quiet time. And if you have to do work on a weekend, it's not Sunday morning, out of respect for the day and for your neighbors. And I'm okay with the noon start time and maybe a 5 or 6 p.m. end time on Sunday. I think right now it's like 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's all day. So I would even consider an end time as well. And realistically, except for the middle of summer, you know, it starts getting dark that time of day anyway. So, but and Saturdays, I also agree with Councilman Schatz. I think, you know, would you say 10 o'clock for start time Saturdays? It's fairly reasonable. I even would have said 9 o'clock, but you know, everybody's situation's a little different. And you know, so I think it's a great opportunity to have the discussion and for the public to weigh in, you know, balancing, you know, those who work Monday through Friday and take care of their own properties versus, you know, people enjoying their weekends and, you know, quietly in their yards. So I certainly think a change is warranted, but us figuring out what that is, you know, I think, you know, it's a good starting point for what Councilman Schatz suggested.
I would also, I didn't go the other end. I'd say dusk as opposed to, because now dusk is going to be 4 o'clock. Dusk is going to be 4 o'clock. In the summertime, it's 8 o'clock, and I do a lot of moving in the summertime ever. So, just a suggestion.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I do agree that the hours should be amended. However, a lot of our residents do their yard work on Saturdays and Sundays. I would like to see the weekday times end at least by 8 o'clock. I remember putting my children to bed, and if my neighbors started up the lawnmower or something, it always caused a problem. The weekends, I could see 8:30 a.m. till 6 p.m., and I would like to include no holidays. I know by me, there's people like to blow off their property on holidays when you're trying to celebrate Easter or something. So I would like to see no holidays included on there. And of course, we'd have to list the holidays because, you know, you could go crazy. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I agree with Terry on the no holidays. I would propose, similar to Councilman Schatz and Shalero, a 10 o'clock start on Saturdays, a noon start on Sundays. I don't recall what you thought about an end date, but maybe 6 o'clock. Or dusk, yeah, depending on the season. And Monday through Friday, to take into account for our, landscaping companies and people who might want to do that after work, 7:30 to 7:30, or 7:30 to dusk in the wintertime.
I think we're at 8 o'clock in the morning.
7 on the weekdays.
It is
7:30.
7 a.m. to 9 p.m. weekdays.
It's a long day.
Yeah, I'm always afraid of over-policing, but I think some changes may have some merit, but I think we all need to propose something, and we'll all kind of ruminate on it and come up with the best plan. Some things that pop up is Labor Day. I close my pool on Labor Day. I got to blow out my lines. Is that making noise? It's not really an air, it's not a gas engine, but it makes a lot of noise. I work on weekends, like Paul does, and I take advantage sometimes of Labor Day. Labor Day is a day to work, in my opinion. But I would be opposed to just completely saying no holiday work at all. I think we should definitely delineate between commercial enterprises and homeowners, and I think some of the other towns have addressed that. There's an awful lot of different equipment. You guys are thinking about leaf blowers. So, you got a lawnmower, you got a walk-behind blower, you got a backpack blower, you got snow blowers. I'm out at 11 o'clock at night when there's a 12-inch snowstorm because I don't want to go out there and kill 16 inches of snow the next morning. So just think about what you guys are doing. But quite frankly, what's going to happen is we can put this policy in, and as long as your neighbors aren't going to complain, you're going to be able to do what you've done all these years anyway. But I can't imagine there's very many warnings or very many actual fines that have occurred on this item. You've got chainsaws, running chainsaws, it's a great weekend job, and I want to work on it with my chainsaw on Sunday, cutting up logs, because I don't have a lot of time like Paul does. So I'm very much opposed to restricting homeowners.
You know what, we have a lot of, everybody's got a lot of good ideas. A suggestion, maybe what we should do is write everything down, send it to Patrick. Patrick will comprise everything, then come back to us at the next meeting with what the majority of everybody wants to do, and then we can discuss it then. That'll be all right with everybody?
Yes.
So just give Patrick, send him an email about how you feel about it, and he'll put everything together. I think he knows where everybody's coming from, but putting it in writing it might be much easier for you. If you made any mistakes.
No.
Okay, everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other new business from the council? I think Nicole was first. You asked before.
Yeah, I've noticed a couple times on some of our local one-way streets, people just aren't noticing that these streets are one-way streets. I've been on Cleveland Avenue, and I've seen it happen many times where people coming, driving eastward up Wyckoff Avenue are taking a left onto Cleveland. I've heard tires screeching, people have been in crosswalks. It's been a few times. It's been more than once. It's been more than twice. It's scary, and they don't notice. It's alarming. So I don't know if we could get a bigger sign, 2 on that intersection. I think right now it's on the west side of the street. So if we could add another one on the east side, and if they can be bigger, that's great. But another spot is the strip mall where the Dunkin' Donuts is. I constantly see people exiting through the entry and entering through the exit. So if we could improve the signage at both of those locations, I don't know if anybody else has noticed any others, but I think it's important.
John Dow Avenue,
That's another good one.
it happens at least
Yeah,
every day.
There's so many signs on John Dow.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Maybe if the road is written on, I do dislike that look
There's
tremendously, but I don't know, it's terrifying. I live in that area, and people are just coming at you. I flag
need
them
a-
down.
We need to put maybe like a crossing guard out there 24/7, just to wave at people slowly and tell them, excuse me, please. To be honest, we've looked at that intersection a few times. There's no right turns, one way, and do not enter signs on John Dow. We still got people drive down it.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we
Maybe those
start-
spikes that come the
Yeah,
right
the
direction.
spikes
Why don't we make the signs bigger, and then let Kelly send out a next to everybody saying, please obey the signs, these are the streets that we're concerned about, and list the streets.
Yeah.
You could take a,
As far as Dunkin'
take a-
Donuts go, I don't think we can say anything about that. That's private.
Oh, no.
Oh, can we?
can.
We're coming onto a public road, yeah.
I thought that's a private property.
And if you have any other streets that you see that is concerned, let Kelly know, before Friday, or
Okay.
on Friday, so she can send it out.
Maybe we can learn from maybe
Thank
we
you.
can learn from the election ballots and put the signs up in Korean and Spanish and everything else to make sure we've got all drivers covered. But I had another new business. One of our residents approached me about the county road lines, Patrick, about whether or not that we're on the schedule to have them brightened up and restriped, the three main thoroughfares through town. We may hear from a resident later about that tonight, I assume. And then, in light of the new passing of the no more bagging your leaves, I would suggest to the resident that sorry I didn't catch your name and address earlier, but there are organizations in town, such as the Lions Club, where, if you called up a club like that, we'd have volunteers over there and take your leaves out for you. So keep that in mind if you're upset. Go ahead, ma'am.
Harry.
I just wanted to mention the beautification committee did 2 projects that I invite everyone to go and look. We took grasses from the municipal building and daylilies from the Christopher Goodell Public Safety Building and planted them over at Borough Park near the gazebo and also near the little arbor. And it really looks pretty. I can't wait to see it in the spring. We also planted 150 daffodil bulbs, mostly planted at the municipal building, and then many were put at the Christopher Goodell building by the digital sign. That's not digital. And the Christopher Goodell building sign. So that area will look pretty. We wanted to place the initial planting of the daffodils in an area that will really catch people's eye for our first year. And then we'll expand and hopefully hit Borough Park, where we planted the grasses and the lilies in that area. So I'm very grateful to my beautification committee. In the winter months, we may hold some trash days to collect trash throughout the litter, and we may be asking Kelly to invite the borough residents to participate just in front of their own homes, and we could hopefully inspire people to pick up some trash, especially the suburban news. I wanted to also congratulate Kelly and all the poll workers on a job well done for the election. It was I voted at the high school, and it was really flawless. So I thank you for all your hard work. And I also wanted to thank all the veterans for their service to our great country. It's very much appreciated, and I appreciate you and the time you gave to this great country. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other new business from the council? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind the environmental committee to set up styrofoam pickup the 18th, I believe it's next week. Next 20th. The 20th. Just want to make sure. I don't have it written down here, sorry, but I want to remind everybody that the 20th we're doing styrofoam, and we're going to be doing for 2 hours with the residents, and then after that, till 1 o'clock, for other towns also. Try to open up with that, see if it works out, then we can probably get more styrofoam. The reason why we're doing that is because we're other towns are doing that with us, and they're sharing, so we wanted to try and share with them too. So gives other people more opportunities to drop off styrofoam. I know I'd like to find out what towns are doing it too, because I have a whole bunch of styrofoam in my basement that just keep building up until we have our styrofoam police. But we are restricted a little bit on when we can do that because of the leaf and dumpster situation. So that, and we're also working with the administrator on anti-idling. We're getting more into that, trying to figure out what exactly to do anti-idling. But I just wanted to point out those two.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before we open it up for the public discussion, just want to let everyone know that on Friday I'll be meeting with one of the members of the police department. We are going to try to bring back decorating of your home with lights, the Christmas contest. We'll have 3 winners, and the police department used to do it many years ago, and I think we're going to be bringing it back. The mayor and council will be doing it this year. You'll find out more information probably at our next meeting about what it's going to be like. It'll be judged by residents who do not live in our town, so everything will be fair. But you'll hear a little bit more once I have my meeting with the police, and you'll know what's going on with that. If we have no more new business, now I open up to the public. Anybody from the public would like to discuss anything, come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Janet Hascup, 98 Longview Drive. I have 2 things. That noise ordinance, I know you didn't say, does the public have any comment, but does that get rid of the whole ordinance as far as where I live, there's a street that plays music up until midnight or later loud, and also dogs that just keep barking and barking all night long. And I thought the ordinance was like 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, that should stop. So I'm just throwing that out there, because it can't just be the lawnmowers and I was going to say blow dryers. But that's what I want to say. And another thing is, I was under the impression that last year when we had a curfew for Cabbage Night, Mischievous Night, whatever you want to call it, the night before Halloween, that was an ordinance. And I was mistaken, and okay, how do we make it an ordinance?
What we could do is, it is a resolution right now, we could make it.
Okay.
So we'll put on the agenda for.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Al Golden, Dante Place. You know, you all forget, you're all talking about the weekend, trying to sleep on weekends and what's going on. You know that all week, every day of the week, there's landscapers on my street from 7:30 in the morning till whatever. I don't know if all the people got a lot of money on my block, but man, there's always landscapers there. The place is loaded, and it's constant noise. I'm not going to complain about it. The guys have to make a living. But if they're not around, the wildlife center's blowing leaves and doing it. And they start 7 in the morning, and I can hear them right through my windows, constantly. But, you know, some things in life you have to put up with. I mean, you know, matter of fact, I got a landscaper. I'm getting too old to do that stuff. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I don't care what the heck it is. I can't do it anymore. But it's just a noisy town right now. You know, it's that time of year, you got to expect leaf blowers and lawn mowers and whatever. The other thing is, when are the seniors going to be allowed to drink water here again? I'm starting to run out of money for bottled water. I mean, we really spend a lot of money on bottled water because my wife says, we're not drinking this water. Now, something's going to come, you know, eventually, but personally, I like the taste of Waldwick's water better than bottled water. And, I can't wait to get it back. But I notice lately a lot of, other towns are having the same problem as Waldwick. What's going on with the water underground? I don't know. A lot of towns are shutting down. But, are we coming to some kind of a conclusion with this, or is it just going to hang for another 10 years, or I'm not going to be here?
Patrick will give you your answer right now.
Oh,
But he'll
thank you.
be here, but he'll give you the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So
Thank you, Mr. Wary.
there was no direction that seniors should not drink the water in the park.
I got it in writing.
Well, the direction was that individuals who may be at a higher risk for effects of what's in our water, which is elevated levels of PFAS compounds, may wish to consult their medical professional. So and then its language right from the DEP had highlighted women who were nursing or pregnant, infants, people with compromised immune systems, and I don't know if it said elderly or older individuals.
It said elderly,
It said elderly.
over 80 or something like that.
So those are groups that may wish to consult their medical professional. But the DEP has not given any guidance that says the water is unsafe to drink, you have to switch to bottled water. That hasn't been provided. So that portion of it, if you have concerns, I would encourage you to do what the DEP directs and to speak with your medical professional.
Now, you're telling me that someone in the medical profession who don't live in Waldwick and is a doctor is going to tell me drink the water or don't drink the water?
Yeah, so,
Where does he get that authority?
well, he's a medical professional.
That don't mean,
So I think that they would be able to they should be able to evaluate your specific health and determine if these compounds make you higher at risk. And the state of New Jersey is fortunate to have very rigid guidelines in these areas, rigid than the majority of the country. And so, the state is taking it very seriously. It leaves us in a position of trying to find a solution in a relatively near term. And it causes some concern to individuals like yourself who may be in those at-risk categories. But again, there's been no directive that the water is unsafe for you to drink, only an encouragement for you to seek the guidance from your medical professional who can evaluate you specifically and determine if these compounds would leave you at any greater risk. As far as a solution, the borough started planning for this last year because we knew it was coming, and we are, surprisingly fast-tracked, and we expect to have treatment systems installed at each of our wells by next year. So ideally, the middle of next year is kind of where we're looking right now, but that's a pretty quick turnaround for what will be over a $3 million project.
well, the last thing I have to say is the only thing that supersedes this medical director that's going to tell me this is my wife.
Anyone else?
Mark Raimondo, 83 Highwood Ave. Had the opportunity last week, Mr. Mayor, to see the election firsthand and observe, and I wanted you to be aware that I was very impressed with the way Kelly and the workers handled, especially with the new equipment. One of the things that it seemed, they were all trained. They did have a handbook, so when questions arose from either the residents or other poll workers, they were able to address them and reach out to Kelly during the same time. And the feedback from, the folks was quite positive. She should be commended for the hard work she did, and I know she was probably there from early in the morning, because I was there from 6 to 8, and I'm sure you were there earlier than us, and later than us. So I'd like to commend Kelly for the hard work, and you guys should make sure you take care of her. That's it.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much.
Thank you.
Did you tell them to do it? Anyone else?
Golden again.
Where do you
I
live?
just want to
Excuse me, where do you
second, I just want to second that. That's all.
live? Okay, thank you.
Kelly was there from 4:30 in the morning.
4 a.m.
Yes, Stan.
Yeah, Stan Kowalski, 47 Durante. I was the one that approached Greg about the striping that has, on crosswalks and directional arrows. I think it's time to do, I'm not sure if we're going to do that before the winter, or is there a spring project for that?
At the county's direction, so if they're county roads, the county comes through the stripes, we'll contact the county and see what their plans are. I think we had put in our inquiry to them recently, and I don't believe we heard back, so I'll follow up with them.
Yeah, speaking of county roads, there's some potholes on Wyckoff Avenue, which is a county road, right by the 7-Eleven, right down from Crescent. I keep hitting between there and the high school. I'm sure a number of you guys have hit that. Can somebody reach out to the county before the winter comes?
Yeah.
And they get bigger? Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to go into close? By Greg, second by Don. All those in favor?